How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me, as usual, is Leonard. This is a show about wrestling, and this is our 100th episode, and we have enjoyed doing the show with you so far, and we'll continue to do it unless some unforeseen events prevent that from happening. But
like me getting a better offer.
Right. Well, hey, if CM Punk, who might not have a job much longer, offers you the host position, I'd tell you to go too.
Yeah.
But no, we have a lot of fun, and we're always trying to find new topics and new ways to bring in viewers and listeners. So we will continue to do that. And we wanted to do something a little bit more special for our 100th episode. And initially I had thought about something having to do with favorite matches, but I was like, well, that's so, humdrum and boring. I don't want to do just that. So I decided that we would tackle some of our favorite matches by decade. And we're going to start with not a decade, but we're going to start with our favorite matches from the pre-Golden era. We'll just call it that. I haven't really worked out the title other than that yet, but we're talking anything from before 1980 is fair game. And obviously that makes this a little bit more challenging for anybody who has gone and viewed stuff from before 1980, because not every event was televised or videotaped, and the ones that were, they might not have had the best technical things going on to make it, good. Like sometimes they didn't have commentators. Maybe the lighting was bad. Maybe the camera work was bad. It could be any number of things. So only so much is out there, as Leonard and I have discovered. And the fact that WWE's content, which encompasses a lot of different companies now, is on Peacock, it makes it tougher because it's not nearly as organized as the WWE network was. So trying to find some of these gems can be an uphill battle. So it comes down to sometimes what you can find, what's easily accessible. Am I right, Leonard?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably call my list 3 matches I randomly came across and liked well enough.
Right. And, your last comment there brings up another point, which is the matches before 1980, you kind of have to put yourself in that time and place.
Yes.
Because the style of wrestling was different, and what crowds were anxious to see was different. It wasn't a lot of high-flying stuff, and, the hardcore stuff was not there, at least not to the extent as it is now. Certainly there was blood in matches, but it was just, you would see different styles, and we'll touch on that as we go over our matches. Now, usually when Leonard and I pick our favorites or least favorites of anything, we usually have 3 each, and that is the case here. However, I did watch as much as I could to try and prepare for this, and as I watched more, I would think about somebody else. A lot of what helped me, Leonard, when I was trying to do this was I would think of a guy that was popular before 1980, and then I would say, okay, let me Google that person's 10 best matches. And then I would consult that list and see what was available. And sometimes the stuff would be available and other times it wasn't. And the stuff that was available, it might not have been labeled all correctly, and you might not know the date. And the reason the date is important is because some guys were popular from the late 70s into the early 80s. So, and the feuds would carry over from one decade to another. So it kind of makes, we want our list to be accurate at least. So,
well, I was similar. I had a hard time figuring out where to start, and good friend of the show, Ronnie, said, look at like the PWI matches of the year. So I went to there, and then from there, it was kind of like figuring out what guys would I like to look at, what guys would I like to explore more. There was one specific match that I thought of that I did find, and then there was a couple others. Like to be honest with you, the very first match I thought of was Bruno Sammartino versus Larry Zbyszko, and that happened in 1980.
That's funny. I actually thought of that as well, and I watched that. And then I realized after watching it, oh, crap, that's 1980. What are some of Bruno's other known feuds? And we'll get there, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
So let me start out with my honorable mentions.
Sure.
I have a couple listed here. And, I guess the only reason I didn't put them on my top 3 list is maybe because there was more of a feud situation going on with some of my others. But one match I watched, which was pretty long. It wasn't an hour-long Broadway, but I think it was between 45 and 50 minutes or so. And that is Terry Funk versus Harley Race, NWA Championship from July 1st, 1977. So this is pre-facial hair Terry Funk and pre-Japan hardcore legend Terry Funk. And this match, as a lot of Harley Race's matches, it really does make you look at some of the complaints that you take of people today where, like say, oh, all these person's moves are the same and this person does the same thing every match. And Harley Race, as good as he was in the ring, a lot of his matches did look very similar. However, what Harley Race brought to the table, and certainly Terry Funk, was psychology. And this match had really great psychology. And it was a 2 out of 3 falls match. A lot of matches on both of our lists are 2 out of 3 falls, incidentally. And this match was really well. It like most of the 2 out of 3 falls matches we're probably going to talk about, it starts a little bit slow and then builds and builds and builds. And this one would have the referee call the match after they each got a fall, call the match because of Terry Funk's blood loss, which from my vantage point, Harley Race gave him the hard way. So because it's right above the eye, and everything I've heard and read says that's where you try to open a guy up, is right above the eye. So yeah, really good match. You can find it on YouTube. I highly recommend checking it out. Another Harley Race match on my honorable mentions list is Harley Race versus Jumbo Tsuruta. And this match was from July 20th, 1978, and is All Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, the reason I didn't put this one on here is because these guys faced each other a lot from the late 70s into the early 80s, and not all of the matches are labeled correctly. For instance, the one I watched, the poster says it's from 1978, but there is no indication of that because the commentary and all is all in Japanese. The terms of the match, kind of balance out. Like, it's supposed to be 2 out of 3 falls, and that's what the one I watched was. Again, very good. Jumbo Tsuruta is a big guy. He might not be as known as some of the other Japanese legends out there, but he is a name that I came across a few times. He also apparently had a match in 1979 with Nick Bockwinkel, which is a match, name that I came across, Leonard. I didn't get a chance to watch that one, though. Nick Bockwinkel was mainly at his peak in the 80s, but he apparently had a match with Jumbo Tsuruta, which also was north of 50 minutes. So I will get a chance to check that out at some point. But a Harley Race, Jumbo Tsuruta, definitely people I recommend checking out if you want to check out this era of wrestling. So in that note, we will go to Leonard's first match. And I don't know, these probably are not in any particular order. I was just going to go in chronological order, but
I'm going in chronological order too, as well, I believe. So my first match is a WWF World Heavyweight Title Steel Cage match. Bruno Sammartino versus Stan Hansen from Madison Square Garden in August 1976. The whole video found on YouTube is about 18 minutes. So Hansen versus Sammartino from April of the year was the PWI match of the year. And I could not find that, but I found this and wound up watching this, which I believe is the blow off to their feud, and enjoyed this well enough. I will say that Stan Hansen with the Ric Flair hair is very jarring to see.
It is.
If you only know him from later on in the 80s. One thing I will say about every video that we have that we're match in the video, the match that we're watching, is that the crowds always seem to be crazy hot.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing I know. As soon as Bruno came out, that place was unglued.
Yep.
And that was pretty much the case for everything here. So, quick walkthrough. Hansen jumps Bruno at the bell, and it just becomes a great wild brawl. Brawl. This is what a steel cage match should be. It's fighting. It's fast paced. There's a lot of shots to the cage. It's not a wrestling match. It's a fight. Both guys work this very specific style with it, and it's a nice mix of there's some wrestling. There's some street fighting. It's nice that way because it tells a story. These are professional wrestlers, but they hate each other, and they're going to go at it. There's a spot where Bruno blocks a lariat with a knee, which I thought was a really good spot. He drops several knees to the back of Hansen, applies a Boston Crab, and Hansen bites his hand to break it, which I thought was a great break. That whole sequence, was again a great mix of the fighting and the wrestling and the hatred these guys have. Hansen doesn't bleed till late, which I think is smart. I think what you see today is when a guy bleeds, like the recent match between Jon Moxley and Wheeler Yuta that we watch for our random matches, he bleeds in the first, minute. And then where do you go? So I like the fact here that Hansen bleeds late, that they build to the bleeding. Hansen has a loaded elbow pad, which he calls his lariat. And Sammartino steals that because it's supposed to be loaded. And he brutally just wails on Hansen with it, just beats him and beats him and beats him. And Hansen gets tied up in the ropes, and that allows Bruno to escape and walk right out. So, I think this is a great pre-1980 match because a modern audience, I think, can get into it and like it. I would put this up against any cage match of the last 20 years or so with just the intensity of it and the story told here.
Yeah, I like this one too. This was the first match I watched upon researching this topic because I think it's one of the first ones that comes up. And I feel like this is probably how a lot of Bruno's feuds went. This was the blow-off match. The difference here was it was a little bit more serious because Stan Hansen had allegedly broken Bruno's neck.
Yes, I believe that was the April match. Yes.
Yeah, and he was out for a while, and so this was the revenge match. This was all about Bruno kind of getting his revenge on Stan Hansen. And Stan Hansen was much more in shape here, and maybe he was able to see a little bit better, as I've always been told that he was blind. So, like, whenever he threw that lariat, it was coming at you fast. So, but no, this was a good match. It wasn't too long, and I enjoyed it. It was, like you said, it was fast paced, and the crowd was loving every minute of it. So, also. My first match that I'm going to talk about is probably the only reason we can't call this best matches of the 70s, which is I have Thesz versus Verne Gagne from Chicago in January 25th, 1952. And this is a 2 out of 3 falls match. The video is about 55 minutes or so. And so there's a lot of these old matches out there to find, if you know where to dig for them. Is this the best one out there? I have no idea, because I'd be lying to you if I said I saw all the matches that Thesz was in. But I felt like I needed to highlight one of them here because of what some of these guys represent. You have Thesz, who is a legend, in every circle of wrestling, and Verne Gagne, who would go on to become the AWA promoter. So, like, these are two really known pro wrestling names, and they're fighting each other here. And look, it's the same way if you're going to go back and watch a movie from 1935. If you're going to go back and watch a wrestling match from 1952, don't expect table spots. Don't expect power bombs, although Thesz apparently invented the power bomb. Yeah. But don't expect a lot of the stuff you're used to today. This match starts slowly, and it does build. And some of the moves that don't mean anything today meant a lot in this match, and that's what I liked. This match was really well built to me. I didn't think I was going to like this when I sat down to watch it. I was like, well, I should try to watch one of these and see how it is, and like I said, there are others out there, but I sat down to watch this, and I actually really liked it. It starts slow with a lot of headlock and mat work, but it builds and builds and builds. You have Thesz getting the first fall with a back suplex, which is his suplex was basically on the head. And then later on, you have Verne Gagne getting his trademark maneuver, which was a sleeper hold. And then, of course, the time runs out and it's a draw. So it's a 2 out of 3 falls match that ends in a draw. If you tried that today, the crowd would go insane, booing people out of the building. But at this point, I don't know if the crowd was particularly thrilled, but they seemed to enjoy it from where I was sitting. And what was fascinating to me about this match, Leonard, was the fact that Thesz was doing a lot of heel stuff. I personally did not know that. I did not know that, like, Thesz leaned on the heel side of things from time to time, because I found that very interesting, because he was getting cheap shots in, and the commentator was explaining like that's why the crowd tends to boo him. Verne Gagne was clearly more of the face in this match, younger and very hungry. It's just weird to see Verne Gagne this young. But yeah, I enjoyed this. It will never make anybody's best matches ever, but it's a part of history. And if you're doing pre-1980s matches, you got to talk about Lou Thesz somewhere. So, Leonard, what'd you think? If you did watch this, I
did watch everything that you sent me that was going to be on your list. And where that match came from is the Chicago Film Archive. And there are several other matches there. I started watching one between Lou Thesz and Don Leo Jonathan because I've never seen anything from Don Leo Jonathan. I've been very interested in seeing something from him. I wasn't able to get through all that because of time constraints, but I did watch all this. And one thing I will say, even though it is long, it doesn't feel long to me. I wasn't checking my watch, every 2 minutes.
Right.
Like, how much more do I have to watch of this? And I think it was because, as you said, it builds very well. It's a lot of mat work. I do really like how Verne works the headlock because he grinds the arm.
Yeah.
He's grinding the ear. A lot of these things like headlocks, chin locks, stuff, when a guy applies it today, it's a rest hold. Or it's a, hey, we need to slow down, talk for a second hold.
Yeah, and to interrupt you for just 1 second, to quote Mickey James, who said this on Busted Open many moons ago, the wrestlers are half selling and the audience is half caring. And that goes along to what you're saying. When they do stuff like that now, they're just doing it to do it because, well, that's what I was taught. They're not doing it to any effect, but go ahead.
Yes, and again, it's being done to effect here. They're working, Thesz is selling, Verne is grinding it. They're using these holds not just, again, as a rest hold as well. It's just what we do. It's part of the actual matches itself. And I think it helps to build the story. As you said, I was surprised to kind of see Lou Thesz working heel. And I like how it's subtle. Like, he doesn't start with it, but it creeps in, and it creeps in more and more as he gets more and more vexed with Verne Gagne.
Right.
And two, it's really weird to see these guys this young because from our vantage point, we did not see any of these guys until the 1980s when they were old, they were retired, they were, pop up as special guests on different things.
Right.
Of that nature. And I think, too, when you talk about the finish, I think the audience of that time period was programmed to accept that it was the best 2 out of 3 falls or a 60-minute time limit, whichever came first. So I assume back then they did a lot of these with the traveling champion, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, where you would have Thesz come into the territory, go up against your top baby face, and do this where it's and the thing was that Verne had Thesz in the in the sleeper hold at the very, very end, and then the time runs out.
Right.
Which is kind of a classic thing there. And also another thing I noticed is that Lou Thesz does a Thesz press. And
I was going to say that for Stone Cold fans.
Yes, and it's just called a body press because he just invented that.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, but no, I actually did enjoy this, and you talked about there's so little that's out there. There seems to be kind of pockets of footage from certain areas.
Right.
We both have 4 matches from Madison Square Garden on our lists, and that's because that MSG was really there at the beginning of both closed circuit TV and cable, with the Madison Square Garden network. So they taped a lot of stuff. The Chicago Film Archive seems to have a lot of stuff from the Chicago area. So, if you say, hey, you guys are kind of centered on certain things, it's because that's what was available. But I surprisingly did with this match as well.
Yeah, and this is why it's important, whether we're talking about wrestling or television or movies, to preserve some of these archives. So whenever you see stuff to support some of these companies, organizations, what have you, it's absolutely worth it because we need to keep these relics alive for people to watch. But Leonard, what's your second match?
The second match is another WWF World Heavyweight title match. It's Superstar Billy Graham versus Dusty Rhodes from Madison Square Garden, September 26th of 1977. Whole video is about 23 minutes, found on YouTube. And this was the match I thought to go looking for because it is the infamous Cody Rhodes, the night they took the belt off my daddy in the Garden match.
It is, yes.
Yes, so he did this promo in AEW talking about this. When he got to WWE, he kind of reiterated this. He was on a quest for the title till he got injured because he wanted the belt that they took off his daddy. And this is the match he's talking about here. So it's very interesting to see Dusty Rhodes of this period. One, he's a lot thinner. And two, he's working like a dancing, shucking, and jiving kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's up against Billy Graham. I would not call this man versus man, but personality versus personality. Sure. The characters here are the story of the match. You talk about a TV show or a movie that's character driven. This match is character driven. It's kind of slow to start with Rhodes surprising Graham early on with his power, being able to stand toe to toe with him. That sort of the story, like Graham's like, this guy can't stand with me, and then he does. So the story becomes Graham trying to make Rhodes wrestle his match, and Rhodes is able to do that.
Right.
Great visuals throughout. I thought, even though it's mostly a static camera, there's some good shots here. Graham falls to the floor and can't get back in the ring. So that's backed up. I jumped some in my notes. But so what happens is that Graham falls out of the ring and he can't get back in. So he loses by count out, and then Dusty parades around with the belt.
Right.
And acts like he won. The crowd thinks he's the champion, and it's announced that he's not. And this might be the first ever bullshit chant in wrestling. Who knows?
Yeah.
Barely hear them chanting bullshit. It's kind of brawly. It's kind of power wrestling. Again, I think this is something that maybe a modern audience could get into because of the character work from the two guys. And two, because Cody Rhodes has kind of brought this back. I could see where some people would want to go and find this and watch it. So I was thoroughly entertained by this. And, it makes me wonder if there wasn't a point where maybe a belt would change hands on a count out or a DQ or something of that nature. Because everyone seems like they believe Dusty is champion until it is announced that he is not. So
right.
Not sure what was going on with that.
Well, so this match, it was interesting. When I saw this one on your list, I thought, oh, I've seen that match because in the past year, I actually went through some of the older matches on Dusty Rhodes' DVD set. Mm-hmm. And one of the matches between he and Superstar Billy Graham is on there, but it is not this one. It is the Texas Death Match.
Yes, which is another one that I found. I don't know if I actually found the clip, but mentioned on the list. But again, this is the one I wanted to watch because of the Cody.
Right. And so I'm glad I watched it because in my head, I was like, oh, I don't need to watch that. I already just watched this one like within a few months. But no, this is the start of the feud, and the Texas Death Match is the blow off. And that one is certainly a very bloody affair. And I would say just as well worth watching as the one Leonard mentioned. But this match in particular, one of the things now, Dusty Rhodes and his personality and how great he was to watch in the ring, like everybody knows that and understands that. I do think, however, Superstar Billy Graham gets a little bit underrated in terms of how he was able to make every other guy that he went up against look outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who they brag in each match. He has 22, 23 inch, arms before the 26-inch pythons of Hogan. And, he's bigger than most of the guy he's in the ring with, but yet he is acting like these other guys are just, head and shoulders above him in every way of the ring. So it's really great to watch that. And this was a very good match. And, Dusty started off really strong, and the crowd was hot for his, win. But again, like you said, they were kind of faked out there and didn't like the end result. But I like this match too. The next match is also Superstar Billy Graham, but it is versus Bruno Sammartino from August 1st, 1977, WWF at Madison Square Garden. This is for the WWF Championship. So these two wrestled a lot, and I actually watched like 4 or 5 of their matches because I was trying to locate this one. And this is because this was the match that's on the lists. And all the other matches I found one from 85, or I'm sorry, 75, before Superstar was really as popular as he would be. I found one from after this feud, like in real late 70s, like 79 maybe, when Bruno came back after neither of them were champion. And then I found the infamous match where Superstar beat Bruno by putting his legs on the ropes and winning the title after, I think at that run, it was like 4 years or something for Bruno.
Yeah.
So this match is the return match. This is champion Superstar Billy Graham, and Bruno is trying to get the belt back. This is the match he gets to avenge his loss. And this match was really good. And the reason I think this one is better is because Bruno is acting differently in this one. Like, he is a man out on a mission, and he has a lot of energy in this match, whereas the other matches, it's basically a strength versus strength type of affair. A Superstar Billy Graham is obviously very large. Bruno is always known for his strength as well. So the match is kind of centered on that, like who's going to get the upper hand from a strength perspective. This match is different because there's more of a revenge factor going on. And there's a lot more brawling in this. And, Bruno's matches are sometimes a little rough around the edges, but, when he's really motivated, as he is in this feud, and certainly in the Zbyszko feud into the 80s, the matches are really a lot of fun to watch. So that's why I put this one on here, because it's definitely the best of this feud. And, although, I think the first time there was like an actual clean, Bruno would get a clean victory before these guys started to feud, and then he would get one after they were on the outskirts of it. But the only way to see this match is by going to the Peacock Network. And you probably could type in Bruno versus Superstar Billy Graham and come across this, but it's called WWE's Grudge Matches. So you would find it on there. But Leonard, what did you think of this one?
Yeah. Well, one thing you didn't mention is the fact that Gorilla Monsoon is the special guest referee.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Thank you. Because like that's what, and you know what? That's what makes it more entertaining, because
yes,
he's like such a factor in the match. And like,
I was wondering if I watched the right match, because I'm like, you haven't mentioned Gorilla at all, and he's like clearly a third of what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. And it makes it, and he's doing commentary over his own refereeing job as well.
Yes.
Which is a lot of fun, because he's talking about how much he weighed at the time, and
he is huge here. I think he said he was 430, and he certainly looks it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, watching him insert himself into the action was great. And it actually made the match have a lot more impact, I think, because, they had to bring in somebody like that to, have law and order in the ring, so to speak. So,
well, one thing I didn't like here was the finish, because Gorilla lets like so much go, and he says this in commentary. He's like, I did not want this to end in a count out or DQ. Hey, the title's on the line. This has to be a pinfall or submission. He lets a lot of stuff go that should have been a DQ, and you can tell. And this, I think, is a great part of the story, is that you can tell that Graham is trying to get disqualified. Like, one, he's trying to get at Bruno, but two, if he gets disqualified, so much better. He goes out and finds a giant bull rope at some point and tries to use that. He grabs the
socks Gorilla Monsoon one at one point.
Yeah, he hits Gorilla at one point, and they let it go. But both guys eventually bleed, and the finish is a double, I think, just a no contest, because both guys are bleeding, and Gorilla calls it. And I was like, you let everything else go, and they're both bleeding no more than they were bleeding, say, a couple minutes ago. But now you call it. So I thought the ending was a little sour. But the rest of it, again, like you said, love the chemistry between Sammartino and Graham. Like that you could tell this was really a blood feud between them, as it was a little more brawling. It was them really trying to get at each other. And the fact that a lot of times when you have a guest referee, it's just the gimmick of having the referee.
Right.
But Monsoon really is part of the story that they're trying to tell, that he is part of the story. He's just not window dressing. And that made this really fun to me. And as you mentioned, him doing commentary work over the match even adds a little more of an extra flavor to it. Again, you would only get that from grudge matches, which is an old Coliseum tape that they have available on the network. So, yeah. So this was, again, I'm interested in going and watching some other matches. But if we had to pick one, I think this was a great one, primarily for the Monsoon involvement.
Yeah, and like this match is on here, primarily because of the feud itself, which there's a lot of matches between these two out there, and it was a big transition point. Obviously, Bruno was the guy for so long, and he was getting older, obviously, and he wouldn't stop his in-ring work, but they would transition to Billy Graham and then eventually to other champions. So this was a big, kind of shifting point. All right, Leonard, what is your last match?
So my last match is an NWA World Heavyweight title bout. Andre the Giant versus Harley Race. Best 2 out of 3 falls from the Summit in Houston, Texas on January 7th, 1979, which is 2 days before I was born. And it's almost a half hour. The whole video is that you can find on YouTube. So to a portion, I wanted to maybe find something from Harley Race. I also wanted to maybe find something from Andre the Giant from was considered to be, his best period. And I found this match and said, okay, let's watch this and take a gander at it. Because what I love about this is that it's a completely different Andre match from anything I had ever seen, and probably anyone of our age group, has seen. You either see the later stuff where he's broken down, or you see a clip of the novelty stuff from earlier in his career where he's, fighting 3 guys at once, or a battle royal with 10 midgets and stuff like that. So I should mention also that there's no announcers, which makes it a little rough, and you can really kind of hear the ring, which to me sounds like popcorn popping.
Yeah.
And then Harley Race has a very odd, like, like sound that he makes.
When he's saying, I think I took that as him constantly saying no to the referee for the submission.
Okay.
But I could be wrong about that. But that,
it's a very guttural sound that he's making, almost constantly. So that's a little rough. But there is a big spot in this match that makes it kind of famous. Is at one point they go to the outside. Harley Race gets Andre in the gut with a chair and then body slams him on the concrete outside. That's a very famous spot. And WWF, of course, put out this thing before 1987 when WrestleMania 3 that nobody's ever slammed on the Giant. That never happened. That's BS. Hulk Hogan even slammed Andre back in the 70s, as well, or the early 80s when they had matches. So Harley Race is one of the more famous body slams because it was outside, because it was on the concrete. Andre is really interesting here because it's he's wrestling. He scores a nice backdrop on Race toward the start. He gets a straight jacket sleeper on Harley, which blew my mind, and the way that he's got him and he's just like ramming him while he's doing it. I mean, It's really cool. There's thunderous chops throughout. Andre gets a suplex. I mean, it's just. To me, from comparing Andre here to what I've seen later on, it's like watching, Kurt Angle,
right?
Almost with what he's doing, with what he's capable of doing here. I thought about just giving a list of every single move that Andre actually performs here. This is a longer match, so I like the pacing and I like the match construction because you get a high spot and then kind of a wear down move. And even those, like we were talking about earlier with Thesz and Verne Gagne, is they're working, they're selling, they're moving around the ring. It's just not a rest hold. And even though this might not be a modern style, again, I think all the matches that we've picked are something that I think maybe a modern audience could get into if they allow themselves to get into. So the first fall ends with Harley with the body slam, as I mentioned, and then Race takes the fall by count out. And I don't know why that's not a DQ for Andre, but he gets back in the ring and wins by count out.
Right.
Second fall, Race gets really aggressive And I think the story here is because he's got a fall to spare. You know, if he gets DQ'd or whatever, that's okay because he can weaken Andre and get that third fall. He even grabs a title belt at one point, and the referee takes it away. Andre throws Race in from over the top of the ring, which is very cool. They go outside, he picks him up and throws him. That's a cool spot. And Andre wins with a splash. And to see Andre do this kind of full on body splash was really, you know, neat. You could tell where that would probably hurt someone. And then the third fall starts, and I saw how much time was left in the video, and I wasn't expecting much here. So basically, Andre chases Harley out of the ring, rolls him back in. Then Harley goes out through the corner to the other side, and he grabs Andre's leg and won't let him enter. So it winds up being a double count out for both of them, which I don't know why the referee would allow that. That's a bullshit finish to me. Yeah. So even though there are probably better Andre the Giant matches out there, just watching anything from this time period, I think would really be worth your while against an established superstar like Harley Race. So even though I didn't, you know, like the finish of this, and I thought some of the finishes were very wonky here of these falls, I really did like the chemistry they had, and I liked seeing Andre actually wrestle a match and not just do the late style Andre match that he was capable of, only capable of doing, you know, from about the mid 80s on. So, you know, again, I would be interested in finding more stuff of Andre from the 70s against guys like Harley Race. And I'll mention too, you know, we talk about how to find things. And this seems to me maybe a series of NWA matches, possibly from Houston, because I saw a few others kind of looked about the same time period, same kind of, you know, look to it. So there are some things like that out there. But, you know, what was your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this was fun to watch, and it's certainly one of the better Andre the Giant matches that you'll see because he's in, you know, good shape here. You know, he's more agile than he would become. And yeah, I mean, you take a look at some of the splashes that some of the later superstars would do, and like they're obviously trying to protect the guy. But when Andre throws this splash, like, you know that like that's going to be the end. Yeah, I thought that they did have good chemistry. I mean, the fact that Andre got a butterfly suplex at one point was, you know, just amazing to me. But yeah, he was pulling out some moves that you don't see, and some moves that you would continue to see him do, like the, you know, the work in the corners and stuff like that he would become known for. And yeah, the body slam thing, you know, to me, that's like old at this point. It's like, okay, Hogan was not the first. Like, that's how they wanted to promote it. And, you know, other guys have slammed Andre the Giant. Antonio Inoki, there was a clip of him because he just passed away. There was a picture of him slamming Andre. Other people have done it. You know, Andre might have been a little bit lighter at this point, but who knows? But yeah, this was fun to watch. And yeah, it was a BS finish, but Andre was not pinned, and Harley didn't lose the title. So I suppose that's how they were trying to accomplish both of those goals. And here you have it, right?
Yeah.
My last match, if we're going in chronological order here, is from September 24th, 1979, and it is WWF champion Bob Backlund versus WWF Intercontinental champion Patterson in a steel cage match at Madison Square Garden. And it's about 16 minutes and 43 seconds long. And I actually first watched this match years and years ago because you might not be able to see it, but it is behind me, is the WWF DVD set Bloodbath, you know, some of the great steel cage matches. And this match is on there, and that's why I chose to seek this out. And another reason is because I definitely thought Bob Backlund needed to be represented somewhere. Because as we get into the 80s, I don't know that we're going to be featuring some of his matches or not. Maybe Leonard will, who knows? But I wanted to feature one of his matches here. And to me, this was a really good representation of Bob Backlund, even though he was known more as a, you know, mat wrestler type person. And what I love about this match is that, to me, this is unlike any other steel cage match you'll see.
Yes, that was one thing I loved about it, but go ahead.
Because this is like a desperation cage match. Both guys get in that ring and they want to get the F out. Like, they just want to leave as much as possible. Pat Patterson is constantly trying to escape that cage. There is no slow climb BS here. Like, they want to leave the cage and they want to win. and you will see some of the shots to the cage, and they do brawl, and there is all of that stuff in it. But that's what I found very interesting about this match, is that both men were trying to get that. Their mission was to get out of the cage, and they never really wavered from that unless they were trying to wear the other guy down. This is a very bloody match, hence why it's in that DVD set, Bloodbath. As Leonard mentioned in an earlier match, they do build to the blood here. And, you know, a lot of the reason that Bob Backlund bleeds is actually makes a lot of sense. You know, Patterson reaches for one of the turnbuckles and just uses it as a weapon because that's what was there when he was like leaning into the corner. But yeah, I mean, you know, for those who just know Bob Backlund's 90s stuff, you know, he was a Spitfire, and, you know, the energy he has is just, you know, you can't even imagine like how ready to go this guy was. And man, the crowd was hot for this match. They were into every single attempt at escape, whether it be Patterson or Backlund. So yeah, a lot of good work from both guys here. Pat Patterson, you know, we all know him as one of the Stooges, but you know, he was the first Intercontinental Champion, and he had a lot of great matches and feuds as well. This match was the blow off to what I read was like a 4 main event run between these two guys. So, and it's a champion versus champion match, although I don't think the Intercontinental title was on the line.
No, I don't believe it was.
Yeah. But yeah, so this was the blow off match. Steel cage was the ultimate blow off at this point. So yeah, I highly recommend going to check it out. Again, you can find, well, this one I think is available on Daily Motion, and if you don't have the DVD set that I mentioned. So
yes, I believe Daily Motion was how you got it to me. Yeah, you know, that's what I loved about this is that so often I've said it and other fans have said it. Why do you have a cage match where the point of it is to escape? Well, we're going to do this cage to keep you in, but you have to get out. And usually, and that's why I love this match, because I've never seen that style really work before. Usually the story's about brutalizing the other guy. And that was kind of the cage match between Bruno and Stan Hansen that we talked about. But it was them brutalizing each other, and then Sammartino leaving when he felt he had enough. As you said, as soon as that cage door closes, they're trying to get out the door, trying to climb over. There's a very long segment where Patterson has his leg hooked over the cage, and I thought he was going to blow his knee out. I thought that was really scary. That's honestly one of the scarier things I've ever seen in a match, because it was so long of him hanging up there and how he kept kind of falling backwards. I thought we were going to see his kneecap fly out. I mean, that's how torqued that leg was over the cage. But yeah, I mean, it was soon, and then to him getting the turnbuckle key, as they call it, and using that. He also pulls brass knuckles out of his tights at one point. And I thought that was kind of overkill, because he already had the turnbuckle. Just use that. You know, and why are you just now pulling the brass knuckles out at the very end? That's a kind of a hat on a hat thing, but a very minor quibble here with that. So I thought this was a really fun match with the style and the pacing and just how they worked this cage match. And I would love to see someone today do this type of cage match, because I think after the first few minutes, the fans would probably go bananas for how they're trying to work that style. That it's not just let's get in there and fight. It's, hey, if the goal is to win, and to win you have to either climb out or get out the door, then that's what we're going to do. And yeah, I mean, I was very surprised by having never seen this before. I was very surprised by it and pleasantly surprised. I love this. I think this might be, of all the matches we've all watched, this was probably my favorite. And I certainly liked it better than my cage match, even though I'd like that one as well. But this one was just, if you've not seen it, I would highly recommend to find it, because you will not be bored by it, even if you're a young fan and you've only been watching for a few years.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And we had mentioned, maybe Leonard did, I forget, but a lot of these WWF matches, Vince McMahon is the sole commentator.
Yes. I think all the ones that we have, he's the only one, except for the gorilla one we talked about.
Right, yeah, and that one was obviously done post, but yeah, Vince, you know, for a long time was the sole commentator for a lot of those events, and obviously he does a good job. I mean, you know, he did it for long enough.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of the WWF old school, which is some of the early '80s MSG, Boston Garden, Philadelphia stuff, and a lot of those he's joined by Gorilla Monsoon, and Gorilla's working almost like a heel color position, which is kind of interesting to hear him do. And of course, that ends up segueing later into Monsoon and Ventura being a top team, and Vince and Jesse being a top team as well. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. And the match that you had between Thesz and Gagne, I don't remember the name of the announcer, but that was just single announcer as well. But he definitely, I think, sounded very, very knowledgeable. He was calling moves different names than we know it, but that's probably because we called it back then, and that's fine. Not to digress from that. But yeah, it is interesting to hear the different style of commentary that we got on these as well.
Yeah, and so let us know what you thought of our selections here. And like I said, there's a world of stuff out there that you can research. Like I said, Leonard mentioned, going down the rabbit hole. Maybe he did that off air, but it is.
I think I said that on air, but
it is kind of a rabbit hole. Like if you go down, the pathway of the pre-1980 stuff, you'll find yourself getting more invested in some of the other feuds. Like there's a lot of feuds that we didn't mention, Dusty and Harley Race. Like Harley Race is probably the guy of the 70s.
Yes.
And he had so many great feuds. We didn't mention anything with Jimmy Snuka.
I was interested. I want to try to find some Gene Snitsky, not Gene Snitsky.
I was going to say, oh my gosh, what are we talking about?
Gene Kiniski,
yeah.
And Dory Funk Jr. I wanted to try to find some of their stuff, and I'm not sure if it's out there. Just didn't get into it. Right. But Gene Kiniski and Dory Funk Jr. That would be a heck of a contest. But yeah, so and I wanted to try to find some Harley Race Flair stuff from the late 70s, because I believe that the famous match from '83. Might have been the second title change between them.
Well, I know that was definitely Flair's second.
Yeah.
So I think they did face each other before.
Yeah.
I tried for a little bit to look at Ric Flair's stuff, and obviously he would come into his own fully until
there's some good late 70s Flair stuff that I've seen some things, but I'm sure next time when we do our favorite match of the 1980s that we will each have at least one Flair match. I could probably give you 10 Flair matches from 1989.
Right.
Alone. Easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it'll be interesting. And so please join us next time as we do cover our favorite matches from the 1980s, which will be a much more interesting list because that's when Leonard and I were growing up.
Right.
So I'm anxious to see what we both come up with. So like I said, let us know what you thought of our selections, if you disagree or agree, or if there's ones that you thought we missed, which I'm sure there are. But check us out on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Check out our random match reviews and our stupid questions videos. And please hit the like button on our YouTube video and subscribe to our content where you can. Every little bit helps. For Leonard, my name is Chad. We will see you next time, and Alexa will see you out.